We're going to get started. Today we're talking about professional development through Zoom or really any virtual platform. It doesn't have to be Zoom, but I think that's really what everyone is using. First, we'll briefly introduce ourselves. Jessica, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'm Jessica Record. I'm the Transitions Coordinator for PNWJETAA. That is our annual career event, and I've been doing that since 2017. I was located in Hyogo from 2015 to 2016. And Bahia, in case anybody doesn't know you.
I'm Bahia Simons-Lane. I'm the Executive Director of USJETAA, which I've been doing about 3 years now. I was a jet in Gunma Prefecture, the best prefecture, and if you have not gone there, please visit. Great for hiking and onsen and the most delicious cabbage you will ever have in your life. I was a jet from 2005 to 2007.
So what we're going to be talking about, first we want to think about the value of career development, especially for recent returnees. That is kind of the focus a lot on these. During right now, like we've already talked about it, that some people are facing issues in their work. And so this is the time that can be spent to build that up. And then also we want to encourage established alumni to come back. This gives them an opportunity to get back to the community and get re-engaged. So those are all great things, but the big problem is how. And so the things that you need to keep in mind, one of them is funding. Most of this will be through GIA because Claire is happy to help with career development. And please note to thank your sponsors in case, just want to give them the shout out. You also have to think about the platform, as this does say through Zoom, but like Bahia said, there could be other ones, but that I think we're focusing on Zoom on this anyway. And then other resources that you might not have thought about, like time and the labor that goes into it, and any other like little bugs that might show up.
Absolutely. And one of the bonuses of a virtual event like this is that it is accessible to more people. You can do cross-chapter collaboration. You can invite other people from other chapters to join you. And I also want to note that virtual events like this can continue to add value to your community even after COVID, even after things go back to normal. USJETAA has been doing our alumni webinar series for about 2 years. And while we have noticed a bit of an uptick in the people who are attending during COVID, they were pretty popular before. So I think you can think about how virtual career development can factor in regardless of whether you're able to leave your houses or not. And additionally, some of the career services programs we'll talk about are done virtually. And so you can do those and think about those post-COVID as well. And then before we get into showcasing some different types of career events, going from kind of the easy ones to the more difficult ones, I just want to briefly mention some advertising best practices. So of course, tell USJETAA so that we can promote it. We can share the event on social media. We can put it in our email newsletter. We can put it in the blog posts that we are compiling of all the virtual events. And also, if you log into your USJETAA account, you can post it onto our event feed. You'll also want to utilize social media to promote your programs. And that means not just creating a static Facebook event, but also sharing it out and using multiple channels to share it with your audience so that you can get a good turnout. You should include your event in your email newsletter and your website. Those are very important for people who are not on Facebook. I know many people are using Facebook, but especially if you're trying to engage people who maybe are not on social media, that is really important. You should also think about what kind of graphics you can use to promote your programs. I highly recommend Canva because it's really easy to use and you can do pretty much everything that you need, and it's free, though you can also purchase cheaply stock photos, and there's also a paid program. And then lastly, about advertising, I recommend starting to promote at least 3 weeks in advance so that you can make sure enough people know about it. The closer you promote to an event, it can be good to do like a final push right before the event, a few days before the event, but you'll want to, especially with so many virtual things happening, post in enough advance so that people can decide that if they want to attend your event, they're not double scheduling themselves.
So we're going to start with easy and work our way up. Well, easy. So the first one that we want to talk about is webinars. So when making a webinar, you have to think about what audience you have. And for this, we're thinking recent returnees to mid-career professionals, depending on what topic. And like almost all of these, this is an opportunity for well-established alumni to give back. And so for honoraria, you want to think about $50 to $150. And for labor, it's going to take 1 to 2 people and 1 to 3 speakers. So depending on the topic, you'll have to decide how many people you want and then how much is the honorarium for that. And then start planning at least 1 month ahead of time. That'll give you the 3 weeks that Bahia had talked about for planning. And then also set up the time, talk to the speaker and such. So one of the ways that we decided that we wanted to do this presentation was to actually talk about chapters that have done this and ask them to talk about what they did, because we don't know everything. So for example, JETAA Portland had webinars on resumes and upskilling and grad school. And if it's okay, I'm going to ask Felicia if she can talk for a few moments about what you did.
Hi, I'm Felicia, and yes, this is Spider-Man. So yeah, we basically every year we do a career, not a career, we don't do career webinars normally, of course, but we do do a resume workshop every year. So that turned virtual this year. And yes, the graphic here was for one of our boosting your resume was for one of our workshops. That was the last one we did, not workshop. This one was a webinar. We had Amelia Hagen come and talk at this one. But as you can see in the slide here, the example, upskilling versus grad school, that was the other one. And then we did, that was another webinar. And then we did a workshop on resumes, which we normally do every year. So that went virtual. Yeah, I was asked to talk about a few points, so I will go to those if that's okay. Let's see, just a moment. So we had those 3, and I wanted to talk about how many presenters we had for each one. So if you're a visual person, I'm just gonna send you the link to the document I have. Maybe that will make it easier for everybody. If I can, I'm just like going back and forth between applications here. Oh, I have to copy it. But so basically for every webinar or workshop, we had 1 presenter. And then 1 organizer. The exception here was the resume workshop. So I had 2 people in my chapter. They reached out to the guests we would have. So we had 1 presenter and 1 moderator, and they were both going to do a review for the resume workshop. And yes, our main audience was for all 3 of these were recent returnees and anyone changing careers and job searching. Our honorarium for each person who came to speak at our events or help. So presenters for our webinars, and then for the resume workshop, the 2 guests that we had helping with that as a reviewer or presenter, or presenter. They all got a $50 honorarium, and we're normally paying for our regular monthly fee for Zoom, so it did not cost anything extra in that regard because we were paying for that anyway. And then for how far in advance you'd recommend people to start planning for an event like this, I personally tried to plan about 2 months in advance, especially to give the speakers notice to prepare their presentation. Just wanted to make sure to give them ample time to do that. Yeah, I hope that was sufficient.
Yes, thank you, Felicia. That's great.
Yeah, no problem.
And Bahia, do you have anything to add from your experience for USJETAA?
Not anything really specific. Just want to mention that we do an alumni webinar series, and you can always take a look at the types of things that we've been doing. We typically feature between 1 to 3 jets, either in a presentation style or a panel style webinar. And we've featured jets in specific career fields, but also more specifically about resumes, grad school, LinkedIn, et cetera, targeted towards jets.
Excellent, thank you. So next we have networking sessions. So this is the same, just got to think about your audience. Are you trying to connect people who are established with newer people, or new people with each other, established people with established, just trying to decide how that will run. This shouldn't cost anything because people are coming to expand their network. So besides the software, that should be your only cost. Really, you only need one organizer for this, and you should plan at least 1 month ahead, and because you're just telling people to show up. And the thing that you need to plan ahead, though, is that you'll be putting people in breakout rooms. So you might need to think about some questions to have beforehand, or any additional things that you'll want during the breakout. Ideally, too, you might have some people that you know well that you can strategically place so that they can help run the room. And we know that Jitani has done this. And Ryan, if you are here and would like to tell us what you did, we appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Jessica. So we actually had 2 kind of networking sessions. The first was a more casual talk. About 10 people joined that. But I thought it was, a little stale, a little boring. And then as Jessica alluded to, we utilized the breakout rooms feature. So for our second networking session, we had about 12 people. So I broke them up into 2 to 3 people per room, or 2 to 3 people per room. So it was small enough where it would be intimate, as opposed to a little intimidating when you had 10 to 12 people, especially if you didn't know anyone. And then for this second networking session and the breakout rooms, I would give them kind of like a natsukashi topic. So we used, like favorite Enkai story. We talked about food you discovered in Japan that you can't readily find in the US, and then something your prefecture was famous for. And so after, I would put them into the breakout rooms, I would give them around 8 minutes. So each person would have around 2 to 3 minutes to speak. And then we would come back as a whole. And then if you wanted to talk about something that came up, or, something that you didn't know about someone, even though you might have known them for 4, 5, 6 years, it was really nice that you could bring that back to the larger group. And I know I didn't mention this yesterday, but this worked really well for the outgoing jets, or jetlings. I also did a similar session with them. And that worked out even better because we had around 50 of the jetlings join. So those breakout rooms were, a lot more effective, because there's no way we could have gone through, 50 people talking, giving an introduction in about an hour and a half. So, we talked a couple of topics we used for that were, where would you like to travel in and out of Japan? If there were any festivals or activities that you were dying to go to or try, and then something unique you'd like to eat in Japan. And I have a whole bunch of different topics and questions that, were in the back of my mind. I wrote them down. So if you'd like to have that list, I can share that with anyone as well. So thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Ryan, especially for offering to make the list, because I feel like the icebreaker questions are sometimes hard to come up with. And for our event for transitions, we did a similar thing for, we did mentor sessions. And so we had some established alumni talk in small groups. The only real major difference was that they pre-registered and could say, I want to be with this person or this person. And then we pre-assigned them. So I think that we had anywhere between 2 people, the mentor and mentee, up to 7. And in that case, we didn't really control it because we knew that they were already professionals, and we just left it for them to talk. And what seems to have happened is that most of them connected through LinkedIn. And so it was like the perfect networking. It happened. And then, but yeah, I know that you have had some. Do you have anything else to add?
Well, two things I realized we probably should have put on this slide, but is
Yes.
to think about what I'm glad Ryan mentioned, which is the size of the room.
Yes.
You want to make sure the rooms are small enough that people have time to talk, but maybe large enough that people can, meet enough people. So it depends on whether you're going to do a series of like shorter, like speed networking. Maybe you only want 2 to 3 people, or if you're going to do something, that's designed to give them time to really get into some more in-depth conversations. So maybe you could go up to like 7 people per breakout room. And for these kind of larger conversations that you're trying to facilitate, I think you probably want like at least 20 minutes or more, depending. And then like Ryan said, I think it can be really helpful to give some questions, prompts, or tell people, this is what you're supposed to do in this room. So when you get there, introduce yourself, and then answer these 2 questions so that it kind of gets the conversation going.
Yes, and the other thing that I wanted to add that now we know about Zoom, or Zoom added, it should be easier now that people can move themselves to breakout rooms. So then you can already name those by topic. So as things evolve using online, I just see this getting better in the future.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One more thing. Logistically, too, there's a guide that you can download from Zoom about how to you just do it in Excel. There's a format like room, just name of room, and then the email address of the person you want in that room. So if you are pre-doing breakout rooms, you can upload that and do it from the back end of Zoom, which is pretty convenient if you have a lot of people. All right, I think this is me. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about career counseling. I know a lot of chapters have done career counseling. I tried to list all the ones that I knew of who have done it here, just so that you can see how many have taken advantage of this idea. Basically, for career counseling, it tends to be targeted at recent returnees or mid-career changers, like people who came back and did something for a while but are thinking about moving into a different field. The cost is $120 per session. That's Emily's special JET rate. It may be a different rate if you end up hiring a different person, but I believe that all of the chapters and USJETAA have all worked with Emily because as a JET alum herself, she knows very well the unique challenges and skills of a JET. I think for organizing, you want 1 to 2 people, and you're going to need, of course, the career counselor. Whenever you're thinking about how to fund this and submitting any requests for funding, that is when you should start planning, because the funding will be crucial to something like this. So request the funding when you're first submitting your GIA applications. And then I think you should start organizing at least 2 months ahead of when you're opening your application. Another thing to think about is your application form. How will you be accepting people into the program? You can create a Google form and use that, which is pretty easy, and then contact people once they're accepted. For the selection process, I recommend considering whether you're going to prioritize recent returnees or if it's just first come, first serve who signs up. And that's just up to you, depending on who you want to target. Now, I would like to invite Terry from JETAA Rocky Mountain to just talk a little bit about what they've done, because they were really the first chapter to pioneer and start these types of programs.
Okay. Hi, guys. So I'm Terry. I'm from the JETAA Rocky Mountain chapter, as Bahia said. I've met a lot of you before at several NatCons prior. This is my 3rd NatCon. And yeah, so I believe we started this in 2016. I was still in Japan, and then I came back and was introduced to it a little bit more. But it's a really great program. Emily has volunteered her services to us we pay for it, but she's still the one who helped reach out and made this very possible and very easy for people to sign up. Essentially what you do with her, you sign up, you take a survey through Google Forms that we set up to make sure like we can figure out a date and time that you can meet with her. In the past, she'd meet with you in person. Now she's been doing it virtually, which is great as well. And then she'll go over what your career goals are currently and what you're hoping to accomplish and what you need help with. I have attended 2 sessions with her, and it's been wonderful. She's a great person to just talk with and work with. We'll go over what your goals are and then how your resume looks, how to format your resume for what you're specifically going for. So I, at one point, wanted to do administrative work. So we modeled my first resume through that. And then in the most recent session we had, I was looking to become a virtual assistant, as well as like, what about real estate? And just tossing through ideas of what you want to do and what are the things you need to do to accomplish that. So she is an excellent resource as well, because she has such a vast knowledge of like what to prepare for depending on where you want to go. And not only that, she also knows a lot of different people and is super willing to help you connect with those people within those fields that you're looking for, so that you can talk with them, ask them about how they got into their field and what are some things that you could work on to get into that field. And yeah, so it's been very helpful. We've been writing a grant every time we request her. So it's really nice and formal. Adam has usually been the one to do it. So I'm not super informed on how it goes, but I've seen a couple of them and they're really well formatted. I'm sure we can share that with you guys if you want like examples of how we've written it, so that you can request Emily's services as well, or possibly another career counselor in your area. But yeah, and yeah.
Thank you so much, Terry. That's really helpful, and I think it'd be fantastic if you could share what your application looks like. I think it'd be really helpful to people. And yeah, anyway, the career counseling is really great. USJETAA has done it for 2 years. This was our 2nd year. There definitely was more of a demand this year than last year, which I think is not surprising given the circumstances. But I do hope it is something we're able to offer at the national level for, moving forward. Now I'd like to talk about a related program, resume reviews and workshops. Felicia already talked a little bit about their resume workshop, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it in general. So for our experience, this is the 2nd year we're doing resume reviews, and from my experience, it's really anyone seeking a job at any level. We've had people, recent returnees obviously are interested in resume reviews, but also people who are looking for high-level, director-level positions have also utilized this service. The cost, our estimated cost is between $50 and $75 per resume, but if you do group sessions or have volunteers and do a peer review, you could do it with less cost. For labor, I recommend having 1 to 2 organizers, depending on how much time people have to devote. And then you probably want between 1 and 3 professional resume reviewers, depending on how many resumes you're going to be looking at, or if, for example, you're doing it as part of another event where you need to have people break out into multiple rooms at the same time. Again, if you're seeking funding for this, start planning when you're submitting your request for USJETAA. Begin organizing 2 months ahead of your application's opening, and you can do a similar process to what we just talked about with the other career counseling in terms of having people fill out a form to apply. Again, think about the selection process, your recent returnees, or is it first come, first serve? I do find these programs are of interest, not just to recent returnees. So this could be a good way to engage people at different stages. And how will you accept the applications? Will you have people submit their resume ahead of time, or will you have them just describe kind of what are the specific kind of pain points that they have on their resume and what kind of job they're looking for? So if Casey Neely, our USJETAA's program coordinator, is here, I think she is, I would like to invite her to just talk briefly about the 2 different ways that we have done resume review programs over the past 2 years.
Yes, hello. So I guess I can just talk about how we've done it this year. We've had an overwhelming amount of people signing up this year, especially. And I don't know if that's because more people are online or because of COVID and thinking about, next steps in their career. But this year we actually we worked with Emily for the resume review and for the career counseling this year. And for resume review, we worked with her to design an online course so that everyone who signed up for the resume review could do that online course. And that was sort of geared towards general resume, fixing things like formatting and, how to put things into your resume and things like that. So we gave people a month to sort of take this course and fix general things like that. And then while we had that month, we surveyed everyone to see, what different fields everyone was going into. And then we set up workshops. So we had our course over the month of October, and then we just had our workshops over November. And we set up 7 different workshops in different fields. So I think the most popular fields were like education and people who were working in like entrepreneurship or like business. So those I think were the most popular. And then we had several like less popular like tech field and things like that. And then so we had people signing up for those, and then they would attend the workshops. And then those workshops were about, I'd say maybe 2 to 4 people. And then Emily would work with them individually to sort of help them gear their resume for that particular field. And then, once they were doing that and updating their resume, they would send their resume to Emily if they had like, further questions and things like that. So that's what we did this year. Last year, we worked with another person for the resume review. I can't remember her name right now.
It was Kamara Tofolo, who was
Yes.
actually a jet in Gunma when I was a jet there, who is a Canadian jet who became a professional LinkedIn and resume expert. And that's what she does for her job now.
Right. Yeah. So we had Kamara Tofolo, and she was working more one-on-one with everyone. And so that was more sort of like the career counseling where she was working one-on-one with people, and they would send her their resume. She would go over the resume, and then she would create a video, basically things that they could improve on their resume and fix. And then they were able to view that video in their own time and then fix things that way. But I found this year we were able to incorporate a lot more people, and I attended some of the workshops as well and found that it was very useful for people to talk to other people who were going into the same field about their resume, as well as Emily. So that's kind of how we set it up this year, and everyone was able to participate. So I thought that went pretty well.
Thank you so much, Casey. Yeah, I think the real benefit this year was that we were able to just serve more people because of the format for the same amount of funding. Okay, well, let's move on to the next section, career fairs. So your career fairs, many chapters are moving virtual for career fairs this year. Your audience might be job seekers, but a mix of recent returnees and those who have been back a while. For cost, your main costs are honoraria for resume reviewers and speakers. And if recruiters or companies are coming, they should come for free or pay you. You should not pay them. And then for labor, 2 organizers, and then you'll need speakers. The examples here are directly from USJETAA Southern California. So they had 2 people organizing, 4 speakers, 6 resume reviewers, and 1 recruiter at their event. And they recommend to start planning at least 1 month ahead. I invited USJETAA Southern California to speak today, but they unfortunately could not make it this evening, but they did pass on some notes for me to share. Their main audience really was recent returnees, but they opened it up to all USJETAA members that were thinking of looking for work or thinking about changing careers. They had 20 signups and 18 participants, and it was a good mix of both recent and non-recent returnees. And most of them were from USJETAA Southern California, but there were a few people from other chapters. And their main budget costs were for honoraria. So they spent about $500 on this event, plus the Zoom subscription, which if you already have that, that isn't really an additional cost. They had 2 organizers from USJETAA Southern California lead the event that day, 4 speakers presented on their career fields, which were tech, government, human resources, and legal, and then 6 resume reviewers. And then 1 recruiter presented during the resume review session to talk to participants interested in working for Japanese companies in Southern California. Their schedule, the event started at 10 a.m. with 4 speakers, and they each presented for 30 minutes. Then there was a lunch break, followed by icebreaker, and then they finished off with the resume review sessions from 1 to 2. And each participant had 30 minutes with the same resume. And then they recommend that other chapters start their planning at least 1 month in advance, mainly because it took a lot more time than they thought to reach out and find the speakers and the resume reviewers and the recruiter for the event. But the actual planning and promotion and implementation only took maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And then I understand that Great Lakes is planning a career fair right now. I don't know, I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but if anyone from Great Lakes would like to share anything else about career fairs, you are invited to speak now. All right, cool. Just wanted to give you the opportunity.
I know a little bit about it. We used to have job fairs. We would have actual companies come and people would come with their resumes and literally interview on the job, or on the site rather, for a job. But due to COVID, everything had to move online. So I know that they are changing it to more of a career fair and giving advice on how to find a job, probably something to do along with resumes and whatnot. But the change had to happen from a job fair to a career fair. But I think it's something that's a good change, and to see how it goes. So we'll get back to you and let you know how it goes here.
Thanks, Faye. I hope it's a successful event.
All right, so finally we've gotten to like the advanced level, the fully evolved Pokemon of this. And so the first one is mentorship. And so your audience really will be recent returnees and early professionals who are connecting to well-established alumni. And so if you're offering honoraria, this should probably be about $50 because they don't have to prepare anything, but they're going to start investing into this person. So that's why. Really, you probably only need 2 organizers, but then plus your advisors, your mentors. And so we were thinking you probably want to start planning 2 months ahead of time. So for applications things, but really you need to keep in mind the first deadline for USJETAA and Saskatchewan chapter grant program, or seek other funding. So this is something that you'll want to, though you'll really be planning 2 months, it should be well before that so you know how to fund it. The other things that you should be considering is the application screening and how you're going to match the mentors. And so I know that JETAA DC has done this, and I believe Kendall will be talking on it and sharing how they did that.
Yeah, hi, how are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Doing well. So yeah, it was, we definitely had the 2-person approach on that one. It's been a pretty, it's a more time involved process, I think, just because of the ongoing duration of it. But for us, like what it is basically it's a 5-month mentorship program. And it's serving to bring the alumni community, so those who kind of have that more mid-level or higher career experience with recent returnees, right? And it's all about kind of getting them matched up, for mentorship purposes. And we really focused on kind of more recent returnees for it. And the goal was to get those who were kind of in the program or back in the program since 2018. And special consideration was given to those who were part of the 2020 returnee group. And so, especially with the pandemic, the way that it was, we kind of saw this as an opportunity to really try and pull up some of the recent returnees who we know, like many people, are probably in bad shape in terms of the economy and getting jobs and things like that. So anyway, as far as the selection process went, our organizers started advertising pretty early on. They had to go through applications. So there's both, advertising for people to be mentees and people to be mentors, right? And the challenge, though, I think was for them was definitely trying to match people. So they were on topic and with the so that you had like a good grouping, and so they had to go through applications. I know that from the people heading it, they were expecting to allocate about 6 to 7 hours a month in terms of, follow up and checking in with mentors, and even just the beginning front end work of that, as far as like averaging it out goes. We received 13 applications for it, which we thought was a great start for the first time we've launched this. And as far as how it's been going, it officially kind of launched on September 12th. It's been going well. There's been kind of minimums that, the expectation set was that they're meeting once a month. They of course can meet more than that if they wanted to, but it's kind of just setting the expectations of what the program's kind of structure is. And they can discuss professional development topics of their choice. And then on November 17th, so just a couple weeks ago, you have a link for it on the slide up in front of us, but they actually had a mentor talks event, and they had a virtual panel discussion, which was focused on career development for JETAA in the US-Japan relations. And it was very good content. I recommend, especially if you're interested in doing a mentorship program or a panel discussion like this, I would definitely recommend checking out the recording that's there. Thank you for posting that. But yeah, no, it's been great, and I know our people put a lot of work into it, and the mentees have had good feedback as well as the mentors.
Great, thank you. And did you offer honoraria?
Yes, we did.
So just because we had the question in the chat, just wondering, is it just initial honoraria or per session?
So it's a total amount as opposed to a per session. And so I should probably point this out. So our funding also, it's on the slide, but I would make special mention of, Sasakawa and USJETAA really were the funding that would have made the program possible, right? Because it was kind of a larger scope. Now, the amount we initially requested or needed has changed because of the pandemic, because there were things like, like providing food for events, just things that now that we're not in person, right? Those costs just don't exist anymore. But to the point, talking about the grants and looking at funding for it, it was a great opportunity for us to try a new program.
Good.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I didn't know if you were going to say something. I'll weigh in just briefly on this, since as Kendall mentioned, this was funded through the chapter grant program that USJETAA does with the Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA, and because of that, we were able to fund a number of different aspects, including the honoraria for the mentors, which the mentors will receive at the end of the program for having given their time. I don't think any of the mentors are doing it for the money. In fact, we found there were a lot of well-established alumni were very interested in being mentors more than they were able to match up, either because the fit just wasn't right, and because for this pilot program, they were only accepting, I think it was 6 different mentees. So there was a lot of mentorship interest, and so this could be a good way to engage your kind of well-established alumni and get them, because to them it's a way that they can give back. There was another question. Oh, and the other thing before I get to Alan's question that I wanted to mention too, because this grant was through the chapter grant program, and everything that we fund as part of that program has to fit with Sasakawa USA's mission of US-Japan relations. These mentorship, the mentees that were picked had to specifically be interested in careers in some way related to US-Japan relations, though it could be kind of tangentially related. It didn't have to be like, oh, I want to work for a nonprofit organization related to Japan. But because of that, like if you're doing it on your own and not, maybe not through this grant program, you could have a little bit more flexibility about the types of mentees that you're matching up. In terms of Alan's question about how hard it was to match, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. There were a lot of people who came forward and said, I'd love to be a mentor, but what they were doing didn't match at all what the mentee was doing. And one person in particular just had kind of a very unique thing he wanted to pursue. And so, the question is, does it have to be somebody who is doing exactly what that person is doing, or can they be doing something? Is there, are they able to still offer advice? Can you find somebody who's kind of doing something a little bit similar enough that they can give them advice? But I think that everybody did become, I think all the pairs are very happy and it's been very successful. The last thing I wanted to mention is that also because this particular program was through a grant with us, we were able to work with the JETAA DC organizers at the beginning before applications were open to help, review the questions that they were creating, to talk about like, how do you find your mentors, mentees, et cetera. And so if you did in future want to apply for something like this, that's something we could support you with. To Akio's question about what types of questions did you ask as part of the application matching process, I don't have that off the top of my head, unless Kendall might know. But what we can do is, once the grant program closes out, we will be creating a report about this particular program, and we'll also provide as templates for all of the chapters. We have a template repository that'll have as an example, like, these were the questions. This is what JETAA DC did. This was their schedule. These are the questions that they asked. So I'll be happy to share that out with everyone. And after this presentation's over, I'll see if I can find that and share it.
Great, thank you. And then a note, because I mentioned,
Sorry.
It's okay, just, you can skip the last slide, it's fine. So at the event that I talked about, transitions, we did mentoring, but they got to decide, they asked. So I'm just sitting in the chat, like, we had we thought of the major industries that we thought that people would be interested, and then had people ask them to be mentors, and then let them ask. So that's just how we did it, but that was for a small scale mentorship thing. Now we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so the last one I said was like a fully evolved Pokemon, and this is like a mega Pokemon. As far as I know, PNWJEAA and USJETAA are the only ones who have done this so far. It's a multi-day collaborative event. Our audience was really geared to recent returnees and then mid-career changers and professionals. So the cost was rather range for mentors that we just talked about per session, $25 to $50 for honoraria. And then for each speaker, it's $50 to $100 as well. It took 4 of us to organize it. So that's why we say 3 to 4 people. And even then it was rough sometimes, but it was worth it. This was a lot of work, but great return. So this is something that you also have to think about funding for GIA, because this is a large project. And then the event itself should be planning 3 to 4 months ahead of time, because each session you have to think ahead. So what we did was we had 7 sessions, and there was 1 to 3 speakers in each of those sessions. We also included the 10 career counseling sessions. This was geared, recent returnees had priority, but everyone could do it. Then our mentoring sessions, we had 2 and about 7 mentors for each session. And the sessions, some of them were webinars and some of them were small, were meetings. And it turns out that people really like the meeting format. And I think in the future, I would encourage that. Now there is Zoom etiquette. Back in April, everybody's cameras were going to be on, everybody left their sound on. But now I think people have learned how to act on Zoom. And so having a meeting makes it more intimate and better to talk and use like the chat like we're doing today. So I'd suggest that. The other thing we did was something called National J-Link, which you probably got annoyed listening about. But this was an old idea that PNWJETAA had like before social media, where we were trying to collect what Jets were doing and let people talk to each other. And so we wanted to bring that back for a few reasons, because even if you are on LinkedIn and you look up Jet, you might not have the feeling that you can actually contact this person. And so J-Link was the okay, you can. And the other thing, this is a little side, now we have a resource and a list of Jets who are doing things. So it was kind of a sneaky way for us in the future to be able to nudge someone, be like, hey, I know that you work for Nintendo. Would you like to speak? So there was some things like that. And with the meetings, we were meeting weekly, 2 months leading up to the event. So it was, some days it was like kind of hard, but it was great. It was still great. I got to know Bahia very well. So you will, you'll get to know your fellow Jets very well. But the most important tool that we had besides like Zoom was Google Drive. So we could work on it together. We could work on it separately. If you're going to collaborate, Google Drive is your friend. And I can't tell you how useful it's been. So overall, like I know somebody mentioned how things have changed. This event has been going on since I believe the 90s. We adapted it, I think 7 years ago. And normally we average 20 attendees with like 40 people total, including staff. And we had 150 people register, and average 50 people attended each session. So it was great. And one of the things that we learned was that for this specifically, we wanted to be more mid-career and help people and focus on recent returnees separately. So that's what came out of this. All right. So thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions, let us know. And you have other questions there. I'm going to find that full question that was asked really quick. For chapters, oh, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so the one, there was one from Sheila earlier on. So he was wondering what was lost, if anything, doing it virtual as opposed to in person.
So at least for transitions, and I'd love to hear from other chapters, nothing was lost. In fact, so much was gained. Normally we were confined to one place, and we couldn't have all of our all of our members come. And we only had Pacific Northwest JET alumni to even pull from and to talk. This time we had people from across the states. We had 5 different countries, I think, participate, people from different countries. And I have a lot of people who've emailed me and said, hey, I got a job because of this. Thank you. Yeah, nothing was lost. I was happy. But on the other hand, did anybody else have experience losing something? I don't see any hands or any comments.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to just consider, I think if for networking, it can be hard to network virtually. There's a challenge there. It's hard to make that personal connection. I don't know. I mean, I know Jitani, if Ryan's still here, has done their Meishi exchanges in person for many years, and then now they're trying the virtual networking events. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts about the benefits between the virtual format or that physical format.
Sure. So yeah, I actually don't know if we're gonna have the in-person Meishi exchange anymore, just because we would gather, I think, upwards of 100, 120 people in such a small space. And it's usually at the end of February, right before the end of the GIA. And you know, with that, it was really good because we had a lot of, I think we're in the location that we're in as well, in New York, we have a lot of Japanese, you know, business people, business folks that would come out the day of. So it was really, you know, we would get maybe 50 to 70 people initially sign up, and then the day of, we would get a lot of people at the door that would just show up, and it would be a lot of word of mouth. And what we're finding, you know, virtually, it's been very difficult. And so I'm glad that you all have this session because, you know, I wanted to do kind of, you know, a welcome back type of thing and career development and networking session for the recent returnees. I emailed all of them individually and asked them, and, you know, one person responded saying that this would be a benefit to them. So, you know, instead of kind of putting all of our resources into this for one person, I reached out to that individual instead of planning a whole, virtual event. But I think that's why the networking aspect and kind of making it kind of fun and talking about, our experiences on JET is a good, icebreaker. And I think that's worked well. And I feel like, this is kind of inspiring me to kind of continue and do something else. I know we were along the lines of, we didn't want to take the thunder away from Pacific Northwest because you were having that big transitions in the fall. And so we didn't want to do that as well. And you did a fantastic job, Jessica, with all of that planning and everything. And I was happy to participate in that. So hopefully, we can continue to do something similar or do a hybrid in subsequent years, because that's a benefit to all of us on the call and many, many more.
Yes, I agree. Like, already thinking about the future, I don't know if our event would go back to being purely in person. Even for our chapter, like, it was a lot of work, but it was at the same time, I think, easier. Adam can probably say that. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think in the future, how can we keep like the career transitions, but also help those jetlings returning. So thank you, Ryan. Yes, exactly. Collaboration, not duplicate. So I'm glad that you utilized it.
All right, so I'm going to cut us a little short here. There will be a breakout session later today that is specific for career development, along with all the other topics that happened these past 2 days. So hopefully Jessica and or Bahia will be in that room to answer more questions if you have them. But